Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to talk about sort of where I ended up with my goals from 2016 and then some goals going forward for 2017. I did okay on my goals for 2016. There were definitely some goals that I was focused on really early in the year that as the year went on I kind of didn't care as much about. And so that shows very much in the kind of stats here, but let's get into them and I'll tell you where I succeeded and where I didn't so much. My Goodreads goal for 2016 was to read 52 books. I blew that out of the water. I read 86 books. Now that did include graphic novels as well as the Animorphs series books that I read. So it is a little skewed in that aspect because I know some people don't count graphic novels, and Animorphs books are like 100 pages. But for my purposes, I count everything as something towards that goal, and even when you take those out it still would have been well over 52, so I'm very pleased with that. I'm surprised I read that many books in a year. That has never in my entire life happened, so that. I also wanted to read more books published before 2000, and I did actually end up reading 23 books that were published before 2000. Now a good chunk of these, well, I guess not a good chunk, only about 8 of them were Animorphs books because those were published in the 90s. I believe the majority of the books, so I think 19 of those were published in the 90s. That included, I believe, the Robin Hobb books. Yes, the Robin Hobb books and Animorphs made up the bulk of that number. And then I had a few books. I read a Jane Austen book. I believe I also read a Shakespeare play. So there were a few books that were published a lot further back that I did read last year. So I accomplished this goal. One thing I did note while looking at my statistics was the period between the 70s and the 30s. I read nothing in that time frame. So I feel like especially the 60s and 70s, I'm really missing out on an entire kind of culture of books. I would love some recommendations for that time period, definitely, because I know there was a lot of amazing literature that was published in that time, but I'm clearly not finding them and picking them up, so recommend away. Another goal of mine was to finish at least half of the series I was in the middle of. Now, technically, I did complete this, but only technically, because I had 8 series that I was wanting to complete or complete up to publication at the time. I only completed 2, but I also DNF'd 2 series. So I ended up completing the Lunar Chronicles and the Winter's Kiss series. I ended up DNFing the T-Rose series and deciding that I just prefer to think of the T-Rose as its own standalone novel. It works that way and I'm okay with that. And then I DNF'd for the time being Game of Thrones just because it's not high on my priority list, and I know that when the final books, I'm not even sure at this point, in that series do eventually come out, I want it to be fresh on my mind, so I'm just gonna hold off and see how that turns out. But for now, I have DNF'd that series. So there were still quite a few on that. Most notably, the one I'm the most ashamed of not having finished is the Mistborn trilogy, because I started Hero of Ages a year or more ago and I still have not finished it. So I think I'm still only on like page 30. I need to finish it, I want to finish it, but guys, Well of Ascension was just so freaking boring. So boring. So yeah, I need a little pep talk maybe to get to that one, but I really want to get to it this year because I do want to know how the series ends. I, at this point, am not going to be carrying on with the second kind of companion trilogy to the Mistborn series because I've not heard great things about it, and I'm just not interested anymore. I really am not. The last one that I had kind of as a goal was to complete my BookTuber Recommends project. Now, I asked 13 different booktubers for some different recommendations. I got a total of 19 recommendations. I read 9 of those. So not the best. I didn't really after about probably June, really look at that list anymore. I still read, because Glass Castle I read later in the year, and that was one of my BookTuber Recommends books, but I just kind of fell out of interest in a lot of the books that were recommended to me. I read a few of them that turned out to be ones I really, really enjoyed, but there were definitely some on the list that I just had I was less than enthusiastic about, and so I'm probably not going to completely complete that list. But there are still some on that list that I would like to read, and I think I still own, yeah, I think I still own a couple of those. I'll have to check. But I do want to continue to read some of them, just I'm not going to complete the whole list. And then the final goal that I had was to use my library more often, and I definitely did that. This was the first year in a long time that I have actually used our local library, which is a shame because it's fantastic. I don't live in the city limits, so I do actually have to pay for my library subscription card, which, you know, is a shame, but I'm also happy to support them and to help provide, you know, that little bit of money does help provide books for people who might not otherwise have access. And also, when I look at it in the grand scheme of how many books I take out of the library versus how much I paid, it's still cheaper than buying those books. So, you know, there's that. According to my stat sheets, I read 15 books from the library. I do think that that's actually an incorrect number, because I know when I was tracking it, I had a little trouble tracking library books because a lot of the books, as far as audiobooks that I took out of the library, were ones that I already had on my shelf. So when I was marking them, I marked them a certain way to make sure it was pulling them off the TBR list. And I'm not sure it tracked the library part of that correctly. So I do think it was more than 15, but at least 15 books, which to me is great. That's more than one book a month, which definitely a good use of the library. I do have a few goals for 2017. They're not really rigid like I feel like some of my goals were for 2016. They're a little more open-ended, but I do have some things in there to challenge myself. I am leaving my Goodreads goal at 52 books. That worked really well for me last year. It's a great way to track my reading while not feeling pressured, because one book a week is something I can easily do even if I hit a slump once or twice during the year. That's still something that I feel like I can accomplish without putting any stress on myself, because I don't feel like the Goodreads goal is something I ever want to stress about. I have had them in the past where I didn't meet them. Go back and look at my Goodreads and you see I don't always meet those goals. So I'm not really worried about meeting it, but I feel like that's something that is very doable for me. So another thing that I wanted to challenge myself with to kind of get outside of my comfort zone with picking out books is the Muse Monthly Challenge. So Muse Monthly is a subscription box that I subscribe to, and I really love the books that she picks and the aesthetic of her company. And she did a Facebook kind of live show thing recently where she kind of announced some different challenges for subscribers, and I really liked the sound of them, and I felt like things that were very doable for me, but also that would challenge me to pick books outside of my comfort zone, or that I might not normally have looked for that type of book. And so I wanted to complete this challenge. I have a spreadsheet that I've created for it, and I'm really excited to kind of get into that and really participate with the community, but also to challenge myself. And then one of my other goals, which is kind of a funny goal, is that I want to have gym books. So what I mean by gym books, I'm trying, like so many other people, to get back in shape this year because I have just really slacked on that. And I really want to put a focus on health for myself this year because I have just not been feeling the best. So one way that I'm finding motivation is to pick audiobooks that I can only listen to at the gym. So they're books I have on my phone through mostly the library, through the Hoopla and Overdrive apps, and also Scribd, to listen to specific books on audiobook, but the only time I'm allowed to listen to them is at the gym. So what's great about that is that, especially if I'm really enjoying the book, it motivates me to work out longer, also to go to the gym more frequently, because if I'm looking forward to listening to more of that book, that's going to drive me to go to the gym and do my cardio, which is great. I really am excited about this. It's worked so far. It's the second week of January, and I have been to the gym a few times. I wanted to go this weekend but was unable to for a number of reasons, and it's killing me because I am listening to an audiobook that I'm really enjoying, and I really want to get back and finish it, so there's that. So I'm hoping that motivates me to get to the gym and also to enjoy some other books that I might not have had time to listen to, since I do really only listen to audiobooks when I'm in the car commuting, so this adds a little bit of additional time where I'm killing two birds with one stone. And then finally, I want to read my own damn books. I know a lot of people did this last year, but this year especially, I took a look at my shelves. Now, this isn't a no buy or I'm trying to do zero buy 2018 or anything like that. That is completely unrealistic to me. I cannot just stop buying books, just period. I just can't. It's not something I want to do. Books are something I love to buy. I love to go in bookstores. I love to look and read about new books online, and it's a huge part of my life, and it's where a lot of my, extra money goes. But I do want to get to the books on my shelves because I have a lot of books that I've been meaning to read that I just haven't made time for because I keep picking up other books. I keep buying new things or checking out something out of the library. Now, I do want to continue to use the library, and I have been using the library in a creative way to read my books by getting the audiobooks for some of the books on my shelf. That's, I think, what I'm going to focus on as far as gym books, because that way it's really killing three birds with one stone. But there are some books that I definitely want to get to this year, and I want to pare down my TBR. At the beginning of the year, my TBR number was at 137 books, which is outrageous for me. Now, that does include all of my Animorphs books, which technically are books I've owned for quite a while, so they aren't necessarily unread. Some of them I read, I just don't remember them, or, I want to reread them, so I decided to count them on my TBR. I also counted some other, the Wizard of Oz books, which I wasn't counting previously, but I do want to get to those as well, so I decided to go ahead and include everything on my shelves that is unread, or that I intend to read, so that I can get a really accurate, clear picture of my TBR. And I was really shocked that the number was that high. So I definitely want to get that number down. Those are my goals for 2017, and they're very loose, and I feel like things that I can definitely accomplish or at least make some headway on this year. I would love to hear what some of your goals are for this year. Definitely put those down in the comments, along with recommendations for books that were published in the 30s through the 70s and short story collections. I want to hear from you guys. You guys are a great source of helping me find things that I enjoy and to really push my boundaries. So thank you guys for being so amazingly supportive and also such wonderful enablers. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you next time. Bye!